Okay, I'm Bill Zaravlov, and I'm with the South Bay Fly Fishing Club, the Flycasters Incorporated. And for beginning fly tyers, I'm going to tie a woolly worm. Okay, I'm using a sturdy size 4 hook with a round bend mounted in your vise with the shank level and the barb exposed. I'm also using 6/0 thread, marabou, chenille, and wet fly quality hackle. Any colors you choose will work. Okay, let's take a moment and prep some of our materials. So take your chenille and with your fingernail, remove about eighth to a quarter inch of the cross fibers such that just the central fiber is exposed. And then any more than about 10 inches of chenille is going to be unwieldy. So if it's longer than that, cut it off. Take your hackle and near the tip, gently pull back the barbs so that they're perpendicular to the stem. Okay, now you want to leave a spot on the stem where the barbs are evenly split left and right. And so you'll leave the tiniest bit of exposed stem there, and that's where we're going to tie it in. Okay, also you want to check that the barbs are roughly a gap length or gap and a half length. If they're not, find another hackle or find a spot on the hackle where they are. Okay, now tie on one eye length back from the eye. Okay, and we're going to put down a thread base with tight open wraps all the way to the back of the hook. And that landmark, the back of the hook, the boundary between the shank and the bend, is going to be just above the barb. Now be careful not to nick your thread on the point. And when you get back there, you can incline your little circles so that you don't do that. Okay, now I'm going to wrap forward to the 2 eye length point, 2 eye lengths behind the eye. Half hitch it if you wish. And why are we leaving our thread there? That's because that's exactly where we're going to need it to be in the next step. Okay, now take your marabou and hold the stem in your right or dominant hand and stroke back the barbs so that they're perpendicular to the stem and oriented the same way that we're going to tie them on, namely tips to the back. And remember, we're going to tie sparsely, so we're going to use no more than 15 barbs here, about a thumb's width or less. And we're going to tear them off in a clump, and we're going to try to keep them together as much as possible. And we're going to make a fine little bundle out of those marabou barbs. Okay, right at the 2 eye length point, go ahead and tie it on. Okay, now when you try to tie it on and your thread jumps magically out of the way the wrong way, almost diabolically, it just means your thread is twisted. So you know what to do. Okay, now we're going to keep this bundle of marabou nice and fine and tight, and we're going to wrap it on the top of the hook toward the back of the hook. And to do that, we're going to hold it in our left or non-dominant hand and apply compensating pressure up and back, tension up and back, so that the thread doesn't torque it around. So that'll keep it nice right on the top of the hook. And we're going to tie back all the way back to the start of the shank. Again, that's above the barb. Okay, now if I go one wrap too far, my tail is going to point downward, droop downward. We don't want that. We want it to be in line with the hook pointing straight back. So unwrap if necessary. Okay, now wrap forward just a bit and bring the thread to a spot that's, say, midway between the barb and the point. Half hitch if you wish. Okay, now I'm going to trim the tail to length, which is going to be 1 gap's width. So that's going to stick out a little past, just a little bit past the bend in the hook. And we're just going to use our thumb and first finger, pinch it off. Okay, and up here at this butt end of the marabou, you can also pinch that off with your finger, or if you wish, you can use scissors to cut it off. Now, whenever you use your scissors, you can help by anchoring your fingers somewhere, like with the other hand on the vise, on the hook or something. It'll help keep it steady. Okay, now take the chenille. We're going to tie it right on the with the exposed central fibers. And we're going to wrap it back again to the very back of the hook, above the barb, and be careful not to mess up your tail set so that it doesn't go drooping down again. And again, we're going to wrap forward just a tad, again about midway between the barb and the point. Half hitch if you wish. Now, if you have a material clamp on your vise, I don't, but if you do, now would be the time to use it. Take the piece of chenille and clamp it back out of the way. All right, now we take our prepped hackle and we're going to tie it on right at that spot that we exposed the stem. And so we're gonna lay it there, right there on the hook where our thread is with the the shiny or more colorful side of the feather facing forward. Okay, cut off that butt if you wish. And with tight wraps, always tight wraps, wrap forward to the one eye point. And if I want to bind down the little butt of my marabou that's sticking out on the way, now's a good time to do it. Now notice I still have about an eye length of exposed bare hook right behind the eye. We're not going to crowd the eye. And we're going to wrap the chenille forward. We're going to wrap it so that successive wraps touch each other. And you could, if you wish, lightly cement the shank before you start. And we're going to use both hands. And the first wrap or half wrap is going to be behind the hackle. And then the rest, of course, in front going forward. Okay, I get to the one eye point. I continue to hold a taunt with my right or dominant hand, and with my left or non-dominant hand, I'm just going to flop the bobbin and thread over so I catch that marabou. And it's not usually the hand that I use to wrap, but I'll catch it that way. And now it's caught, and I can bind it down tight with maybe 2 or 3 nice tight wraps. Now, and cut your chenille close. Now notice I'm kind of pushing the bobbin and thread out of the way so I don't cut my thread. I'm going to cut it very close. And if there are any cross fibers sticking out, I'll pinch those off with my fingernails. If you want to bind down that little tiny butt end with a wrap or two, go for it. That looks okay to me. Okay. Now we're going to wrap the hackle forward. Now, use your fingers if you can, and it looks this hackle looks long enough that I can. If not, you can attach your hackle pliers. It would probably be better if you didn't. You'll know when you get to the end. You know, it might slip out of your fingers, and you'll think, oh, I just need to be more careful. You'll do it again. It slips out. Okay, then use the hackle pliers. So now I'm going to wrap it forward, and I'm going to not twist the stem and try to keep the shiny side forward. You know, I can use both hands. Okay, and watch out for that point. One wrap right where it is, and then I'm going to start with open wraps toward the front. Now, like whatever reason, they call this palmering. And I'm going to get to the front with about 6 or 7 wraps. And if it helps, you can stroke all those barbs back with your left or non-dominant hand. Now, I'm not trying to wrap into the in between the chenille. You know, I'm just trying to get there in about six or seven reps. Okay, now I'm at the one eye point. I'm at the one eye point, and I'm going to tie this off pretty much like I did my chenille. I'm going to tie it off, cut the butt, bind the butt section down. It's a little trickier because there's all of these barbs sticking out that want to occlude your eye. Don't let them. So with my left or non-dominant hand, take my bobbin with the thread, flop it over. That catches it, but not very taut. So now I'm going to take, with my dominant hand, I'm going to take a nice 2 or 3 really nice tight wraps. It's bound pretty tight. And I'm going to cut it close. Now, in my opinion, this is like one of the hardest moves in fly tying. Doesn't matter if you're using a size 4 or size 20 hook. So you're going to wrap the hackle close to the eye and then bind it and then cut it and then bind down the butt, all without getting any of those barbs or materials into the eye. So, you know, it was a kind of a lucky cut. I don't even think I have any barbs sticking out. But if you do, you can trim them with your scissors, or you can dig them out with your bodkin, you know, your needle-like tool here. And so, let's see. Now I've got just a little less than an eye's length of bare hook, and I'm going to tie what we call a head, which may or may not correspond to an insect head, not necessarily an insect head on this fly, but we still call it a head. And so I'm just gonna, you know, wrap a little tapered head. And by tapered, I mean thicker at the back, thinner at the front. Now don't go wild wrapping and wrapping and wrapping, you know, I don't know, 6 or 10 wraps ought to do it. Let's see what we got. Okay, now you can definitely tell a skillful fly tyer because when you look at one of their flies, they've got a little neat head and no fibers occluding the eye of the hook. And you know, when you're wrapping your head, if you've got a cheap or poorly constructed hook where there's a gap in the eye, you can use your thread to fill in that gap. But you know, these days, most of the hooks are pretty good. You don't even need to do that. Now I'm going to finish my fly with 3 half hitches right behind the head. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to cut it close. And then I'm going to put 1 drop. I'm going to put 1 drop of head cement on that little head. Okay. Beautiful. I like it. Okay, finally, you know, in the spirit of tying sparse and distributing bulk, you know, you don't have to tie off the chenille and the hackle on the very same spot. You could tie off the chenille on the bottom, the hackle on the front, or vice versa, or front to back. You can try that and see if that works for you. But one suggestion is be very careful, because whenever you're cutting anything off from the bottom. Be very careful not to cut your thread. So you do want to use your left or non-dominant hand to hold the thread away while you cut it, the chenille or the hackle, close to the hook. And that's it. That's our woolly worm. Okay.